I ask all of you, as I do each week, each time I speak, all of you who are decent, if you can leave your camera on, I like to see the audience. I realize that's not always possible for those of you still in your pajamas and like that. But if it's practical, I see my friends here. I see Min, I see Henry, and Adi and others. So welcome. I'm glad you're all here this morning. We shall begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. In this 11th canto, chapter 2, Maharaj Nimi meets the 9 Yogendras. That's later in the chapter. The beginning is Sukadev begins, eager to engage in the worship of Lord Krishna. Narada Muni stayed for some time in Dwarka, which was always protected by the arms of Govinda. Now, sometimes an issue arises that Narada Muni was cursed to travel, yet he was staying in Dwarka. How is that possible? If he was cursed to always be moving around, but stayed in Dwarka, how is that possible? We have a contradiction here. Can somebody restore my faith in the Bhagavatam and help me get past this complex contradiction or paradox? What would be the answer? He's always traveling, but he's staying. Sometimes you have these paradoxes.
The curses don't take effect in Dwarka?
Yeah, in Dwarka, curses don't work. It's Krishna's home. So even if he's cursed by anybody, once he's in Krishna's home, there's no such thing as a curse. It won't work. So in text 2, Ko Nurajan Indrayavan Mukunda Chanam Bhujam Na Bhajet Sarvato Mrityur Upasham Amarto Mai. My dear king, in the material world, the conditioned souls are confronted by death at every step. Therefore, who amongst the conditioned souls would not render service unto the lotus feet of Lord Mukunda, who is worshipable even for the greatest of liberated souls? And we'll read some of the long purport by Prabhupada's disciples. This purport was written by Hriday Namraj. I was actually there when he was writing it. In America, we don't see death as frequently as we do in other places. When I went to India and I saw dead bodies lying on the side of the road, it was kind of shocking to me. But I had an experience before that which prepared me. Now, every one of you, I'm sure, have heard the story of the Buddha. He lived in his walled city. And when he lived in his walled city, everything was there. There was servants and food and no suffering. And it was like being in heaven. It was a really nice place. Then he stepped out of the walled city and he saw there was suffering, birth, painful, difficult experience, disease everywhere, old age, and of course, death. And then the Buddha went on a journey of enlightenment, came to a place called Bodh Gaya. I've been to Bodh Gaya. And in Bodh Gaya, he sat under a particular tree. They claim that a sapling of that tree is still there. I sat under that same alleged tree where the Buddha received enlightenment, and I assure you nothing happened. But I did try to sit under it to see what would happen. I was curious. So the Buddha sat under the tree and realized his Four Noble Truths, that there is suffering and the causes of suffering. And he had a great epiphany. And here, I'll read the Four Noble Truths. I have it on my other screen. Um, and that life involves suffering, dukkha. The cause of suffering is desire and attachment. The truth of the cessation of suffering can be eliminated our cravings and attachment. And the truth to the path of cessation of suffering, the way to end suffering is by following the Eightfold Path. So when I was in college, I took a job um, at a hospital, small community hospital in Jersey. And it's what we would now call, I think, a CNA, but they had no certifications then. They called us orderlies, and we just got trained on the job. So I could do everything but give medicine. They trained me for this and that. And I got to the bottom of that job. In other words, I was pretty good, it turns out, at enemas, but that's how it was. So, and having been, seen maybe a few old people die, and then my beloved grandmother died. I spent many, many hours in the woods trying to understand what is death. But I was 10, 15. I had to know that answer, but it didn't come. Then when I worked at the hospital, I had a rude awakening. When I'm working at the hospital, I'm dealing with not old people dying, but young people dying. And as an orderly, I'm the one that when somebody dies, I put the tag on their toe and carry the body to the morgue. The morgue has a sign on the front of the door labeled X-ray room because they don't want patients who may get wheeled by to understand that they may end up in that refrigerator. And it was a shocking experience for me to see what it means, especially when young people died and people suffering and screaming in pain. And there was one person in a motorcycle accident, and he was in a cast, and the cast was put on wrong. And the doctor, and he kept asking for pain medicine. So the doctor thought he was a drug addict. It was giving him nothing but uh, saline, saltwater injections. And he would call from his hospital phone for an ambulance to come pick him up and take him to the hospital. But of course, he's already in the hospital. Then the doctor asked me to assist him when he removed the cast. And when he did, I saw the cast was on wrong and it had dug into it had worn all the way through the flesh and was eating into the bone, which is extremely painful. He wasn't faking it. He was in pain and the doctor missed it. So I'm watching this kind of suffering and young people dying. And to me, it was like a Buddha experience. I said, my God, what kind of world is this? Where, we hide the suffering, where the suffering is so intense and so deep. And young people, I mean, old people dying, you kind of get it maybe. Young people dying, it didn't make sense. What's it all about? And I used to sing, there was a song, What's It All About, Alfie? Some of you may know. I used to sing that to myself, wondering, what's it all about? Why would it be like this? Fortunately, when I went to India, I came across Prabhupada's teachings, the Gita and the Bhagavatam, and I started answering these very questions. And Socrates has challenged us that what's his exact saying? A wasted mind that doesn't inquire. And so this Bhagavatam then is for those of us who have reached the point where, yeah, there is a lot of suffering, and I want to understand what it's about. I want to understand why the world has suffering, what real happiness is, and how all this works, not just those who walk with blinders and pretend everything is fine. Now, I'm going to make a challenging statement, then we'll read some of the purport. Here's my challenging statement to you. I, Brahmatirtha Das, have mystic powers. I can see the future and the past. Ooh, that sounds pretty heavy. But all of you have the same mystic power. I'll show you how it works. I'm walking down the street and I see somebody really homeless and miserable and drunk and falling on the ground, and their head is bleeding and they don't care, and in a horrible circumstances. I know their past. I know that karmically they've done certain things that now they're getting a reaction. Now, if I don't have some compassion, I may get a reaction for not having the compassion. That's also true. But putting that issue aside for the moment, I can see the past, I can see the future. I can see somebody is just horrible. They're hurting people left and right. They're a businessman who just declares bankruptcy all the time and screws everybody out of money, or they're somebody who's just cruel in every regard. When I grew up, it's a little different now, though not in all places. Racism was rampant in America. If you were in the South and you were black, you were boy. And in the North, you couldn't join country clubs. Even Jews and Catholics, let alone blacks, couldn't join most of the country clubs. I'm talking about places like New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut, not the South. So under those circumstances, we can say that it's a difficult situation, a lot of suffering, a lot of suffering going on. And when I would watch that situation, I really wanted to know, what's it all about? Why is there so many prejudices and sufferings and diseases and difficulties? Why is it like that? And we're required as human beings to ask that question. Why is it like that? And that's what's going on here. Why is the world the way it is? And the Socrates' famous quote, the unexamined life, it's not even worth living. It's simply not worth living. So that's the point trying to be made here. Now, this purport's going to go into two sections. One's going to mention that, the material world is a rough place. It's miserable. There's not happiness. Now, this was very bewildering to me when I first heard it, because I have happiness, sometimes with companions, friends, spouse, colleagues. Sometimes sit and read a good book. I feel a certain happiness. Here it's talking about there's not happiness, but I would experience happiness. How do we deal with that contradiction? Do any of you ever experience happiness in the world? And I'm not talking about attending Artik and dancing, but do any of you experience any happiness in this world? Somebody want to comment? Not necessary, yeah. Are you all miserable at every moment? Every one of you miserable every moment? Yes, Sarab.
Hare Krishna, lots of love and respects to you and everyone else. I experience happiness when I say Hare Krishna's name.
Okay. Besides that, do you have any happiness at all?
When I bring joy to others, when I bring a smile to others' faces, when I
Okay,
see
so you
others
bring
happy.
good. Gail, do you ever experience any happiness in this world?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yeah, I feel a really overwhelming sense of happiness when I experience Krishna's hand in my life, where that it feels like so much affection when he's responsive to my heart in a way that only he can do, because only he knew what I was maybe going through. It's just a very direct experience of Krishna's hand in my life. It's a very
do you experience any happiness when you're not thinking about Krishna?
Well, I experienced the happiness of sense gratification.
Okay, so you get some happiness and sense gratification.
Yeah,
Okay, so
definitely.
let's look at the purport says about that. Min, give us. You have a comment?
Yeah, I feel happiness. It's mundane, but when I come home and my puppies greet me, I feel happy.
That is a nice greeting. It really is. It's a little bit of love. And I see it says William or Timothy. People raise their hands. One of you go on.
Yes, my obeisances to you. Happy to be here with you all. I just quickly wanted to say that I think I'm the most happiest when I see happiness in my daughter's face, when I know I could have helped facilitate her having a great day. And I see her smile and just enjoying this life. Nothing makes me happier.
Yeah, the closest thing to spiritual love, Prabhupada gives the example, is a mother for the child. And a mother will often sacrifice her own life for the child's happiness. And I know my own mother would make great sacrifices. I mean, can you imagine my mother's situation? She brings up her son, gets him well educated, gets him bar mitzvah, and then he joins a weird cult.
The camera's off.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And just imagine that circumstances. My mother's poor suffering, but eventually she did pull Lord Jagannath down Fifth Avenue, so it all ended well. But um, uh, parents have such love, so there is love in this world. It does exist. There is a supreme love, and which doesn't end. The problem with all the happiness in the world, there is happiness. There's only one major problem. It's temporary. So we can't deny that there's some happiness when I'm with my dear friends. Every day I speak to Ritavaja Swami. I'm very happy speaking to him. Sometimes we're talking about Krishna. Sometimes we're talking about what life is like for us. Sometimes we're talking about the pains of growing older. I had dinner with Henry the other night. I always feel great happiness when Henry and I can sit and talk about what our realizations are and also what it's like living. So there is a happiness. The point being made in this chapter and in this particular verse is that the happiness that is temporary is not as profound as the happiness that's permanent. So it's not that there's zero happiness in the world. It's that happiness is fleeting and we want something more permanent. Bhima.
Haribol Prabhu. Just a quick question, sort of a philosophical take. The flower that blooms, we enjoy its beauty, and we watch it blast, which means it loses its petals and eventually dies. And that's what we see everywhere. This changing that's happening. Wouldn't it be our attachment to these fleeting moments of happiness, wanting to maintain them rather than let Krishna let happiness and distress come, rather than, oh, I cannot enjoy my puppies greeting me because that's temporary happiness, whereas I want eternal puppies or puppies who stay eternally puppy. You know what I mean? So it's less like, isn't it all about our attachment? And also, of course, our ungratefulness as to where all this beauty and drama and adventure comes from, which would be Krishna, of course. But what about that? You know, we can say that, oh, this world's sex is temporary. It only lasts. It's an itch, and it only lasts. But I mean, you know, that's not true. I just don't. Things come and go. They pass. Unhappiness comes of its own accord, and happiness comes, and we don't attach ourselves to it, but we keep equipoised. But this idea that, you know, this negation of what Krishna has given us in this world when we asked him for this world, and this sort of like bitterness, like grapes, bitter grapes. How do we deal with that, even within ourselves?
Okay. Well, Krishna says in 2:14, the pains and pleasures of the world are temporary, like winter and summer. So as the seasons change, summer is too hot, especially in Florida. Winter, it's too cold, especially in New York. And so there's a certain amount of suffering that comes. So we rise above it, realize that these also are temporary. And it's our own perception and mind that really causes the suffering. So the suffering is real and the pleasure is real. So how to rise above the waves of pain and pleasure? Well, Bhagavat Dharma is the answer. That means Bhagavat Dharma means direct devotional service. And that's a major theme later on in this chapter, Bhagavat Dharma. Because by Bhagavat Dharma, the pains and pleasures are pains and pleasures are not us. We're looking at it. Anybody who's done mindful meditation, one of the famous experiments in mindful meditation was done by the brilliant John Kabat-Zinn, who some of you may have heard of, a student of Thich Nhat Hanh. And he was he still is, a psychologist, I believe, at Boston General Hospital, one of the best hospitals in America. And he was dealing with people who were in intense pain. Maybe they had a cancer or their back had deteriorated to the point where there was no surgical intervention to relieve the pain. The only way to relieve their pain was with heavy drugs, opiates. And then they would be in a stupor all day. And opiates have many side effects. And so these people either in intense pain or dealing with the side effects of opiates. So he tried something. He was a meditator himself. And he taught them mindfulness meditation, where you're looking at your pain. And all of a sudden, these people, the pain didn't bother them anymore. It was miraculous, the improvements and the release from using all these nasty drugs. And it worked. And others repeated his work, and it worked. What's the secret? It's the basic principles of the Gita. I'm not this body. I'm just looking at the body. Oh, it hurts. And we're looking at the hurt and realizing the hurt isn't me. And the intensity of the pain dramatically decreased. And it wasn't a placebo effect. I mean, you can actually measure in brain waves and other ways intensity of pain. And the intensity of the pain went down just by realizing I am not this body. I am looking at me experiencing the pain. Quite dramatic. I've heard John Kabat-Zinn speak on this several times, and it just basically the principles of the Gita in action. I'm going to read a little bit of the purport because I'll get fired if I don't do that, and purport's important. So the word Indra Vivan is significant in the verse. It means possessing senses. Although we are conditioned within the material world, by the mercy of Supreme Lord, we are awarded a human body which possesses distinct senses such as eyes, ears, tongue, nose, etc. So generally, we use the senses in a false attempt to exploit material nature for sense gratification. But, and this is a point we were discussing, our material senses and their objects are temporary, so it's not possible to have complete peace. Take somebody who is addicted to something. They may be addicted to sex or to drugs or to gambling. They never get enough of it. Never enough. A gambler has to gamble more. A sex addict has to get more extreme stimulation. A drug addict is not satisfied with just marijuana. He's going to need something more. And cocaine's not good enough. He has to go to fentanyl, which is, I've had fentanyl during a surgery. It's heavy stuff. And they got to get more and more. So that's basically what it's saying. In fact, our strenuous endeavor to satisfy the material senses inevitably brings the opposite result, namely suffering. And then Prabhupada gives an example of that, gives a famous example of somebody gets kind of lusty, I'll get married, and then life gets very complicated. Of course, in a varnashram system, going from brahmachari, tell me that's what purport reading, 11.2.2. Somebody goes from brahmachari to grahastha. It's actually a step upwards in the varnashram system, but going to griyameti, which means the whole purpose of my relationship with my partner, be it opposite sex, same sex, whatever, it doesn't make a difference here. Whatever that is, the whole purpose of that, if the purpose of that is just to increase my enjoyment in the world, eventually it'll lead to suffering. Usually even the relationships don't last. But when the purpose of the relationship is to help each other spiritually, it becomes a wonderful, wonderful relationship. And that's the point being made herein. There was once a hermit living in a cave, and he was very happy. He meditated all day, lived very simply. He had virtually nothing. He had a loda, a couple of pieces of cloth, and people would give him some gifts. He would meditate all day, and people would come by and drop off some food. He was very happy. And in the cave with him, there was a mouse lived there. And the mouse and the sage, they had no conflict with each other. And one day, somebody gave him a very big piece of cheese. And he's thinking, oh, this will last me a long time. But the mouse will eat the cheese. So I better get a cat to keep the mouse away. Oh, the cat will want some milk to drink. I better get a cow. But I'm meditating all day. I'll need a wife to milk the cow. And then the wife will want children. And then I'm going to have to join the PTA. Ooh, I may even have to get a job. Then he took the cheese and gave the whole chunk to the mouse and said, you just eat it, leave me alone. So there is that mood, because he felt if he would become a griyameti. But those who become a grahastha, just simple. It's not complicated. You just say, whatever we're doing, let me add Krishna to it. It's all a bunch of zeros. Just let me add Krishna to it. Let me lead another piece of the purport. Sometimes a living entity is able to understand the miserable result of materialistic sense gratification, being frustrated by the pain and suffering of materialistic life, and being, this is very important, listen carefully, please, being ignorant of any superior life, he adopts a neo-Buddhist philosophy and seeks shelter in nothingness. For example, you all know how a Mayavadi orders pizza, don't you? Walks into the shop and says, I'll take one with everything. Okay, that's a Mayavadi joke for those who understand that. Oh, my friend Madan Gopal's here. Nice to see you, Prabhu. Any of you who can hear Madan Gopal classes, don't miss it. The desire to merge into nothingness is a reaction of material pain. It's not a tangible concept of the Supreme. For example, if I feel unbearable pain in my leg and the pain cannot be cured, I may agree to have my leg amputated, but it's far better to remove the pain and keep my leg. Similarly, because of false ego, we think, I am everything. I am the most important person. One time somebody went to Prabhupada, said, Prabhupada, I am the most fallen of all your disciples. And Prabhupada turned to him and said, you're not the most anything. Gave him a little dose of humility there. So I am everything. I am the most important. No one is as intelligent as me. Thinking in this way, we suffer constantly and experience anxiety. This is the key sentence here. Listen carefully, please. But as soon as we purify the ego by the admitting we are insignificant eternal servants, our ego will give us great pleasure. So that's some of the points here. I'm not going to read the whole purport, but I want to give the essence of it. Let me stop here and see if there are any comments, reflections, questions, curiosities, criticisms even. Anybody have anything they'd like to bring up for discussion? I can always depend on Gail to ask an important question, as you did yesterday in our class, Gail. So please go on.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you. Yeah, you had us identify our sources of happiness, Yeah, and it seemed like you were more interested in our the happiness that we get that's not connected to Krishna. And then you said that, the happiness that is connected to Krishna, that's the one that's not temporary, that's lasting. But how do you respond to the fact that even the happiness that we experience in connection to Krishna seems to also be fleeting? Whether you get happiness from dancing in kirtan, or like I was saying, when Krishna responds to my heart and it's so deeply heartfelt and nourishing, but they're also, here today, gone tomorrow. You just have the memories, whether they're material or spiritual.
I'll tell you a story. Maybe I've shared this, I don't remember, but it's worth repeating. So I was a bhakta, maybe at the best. I had already met Prabhupada, and then I went back to my teaching assignment in India and resigned my post because I had accomplished what I wanted in India, met a great saint, which was Prabhupada. So I went to Bombay to check out, and very fortunate for me, I had a swollen liver. So I had to spend, because once I check out, I have 3 days to leave the country. So I had to stay for several more weeks as they poked and examined me. And so I was living on the roof of the buildings in Juhu. They just bought this building. Those who read Giriraj Swami's book, I'll Build You a Temple, know the details. It was the most I lived a very austere life when I went to India in 71, but this was even extremely austere. You might say we're in a modern city, but there was no bathrooms except this pitiful place in the middle of the swamp at the back of the property. There were buildings, but in India, you can't evict from the buildings. You have to buy the people out. So it took some years for devotees to take over the buildings and tear them down. So the only place we could live was on the flat roofs of the buildings in tents. And there was all kinds of political intrigue going on by Mr. Nair, who sold the building. But the devotees were happy, and I was observing that. And then Mangal Arti could be at 4:30 on the roof, Tulsi Puja at 5:15. So I'm watching Tulsi Puja, and I'm very bewildered, curious. People are dancing around a plant. That is an odd circumstance. I never seen anyone dance around a plant before. I mean, I know sacred symbols and churches and temples and synagogues. I get that. But a plant, I mean, I had a little trouble figuring out what was going on. And I'm watching people dance around Yani, Kani, Chapapani. And then Sarabi Swami comes up to me, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm observing. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. This is quite unusual, but interesting." I mean, I wasn't negative on it. I just didn't get it. He says, "Stop licking this jar of honey and open it. You better dance around the Tulsi." I mean, I'm supposed to go dance around a plant? He says, "Yes." I said, "Okay." So I started dancing around Tulsi, and it was a totally mystical experience like I never had before. It was quite wonderful. And then another time, I was talking to Satsarup Maharaj, and I said, "Satsarup Maharaj, sometimes I don't feel like dancing at Artik. Just feel like kind of sitting like a bump on a log." And he said, "Yeah, I know what you mean. That happens. So what do I do?" He said, "Dance at Artik." I said, "I don't feel like it." He says, "If you start dancing, you're going to feel like it." Turns out he was right. So sometimes we just have to jump into the experience. And Prabhupada used to point out that one of the proofs of Krishna consciousness is the taste, the rasa. Prabhupada would use the word, English word, mellow. Actually, when he told me the word mellow, I didn't quite understand it. So he asked his secretary, Shama Sundar, to explain it to me. And it's the taste we get. So all of you may theoretically appreciate what the Gita says and the Bhagavatam says. You may appreciate it. But what keeps us going is the actual taste that we get. It's not all the time, but we aspire for that taste. It's not every time we're chanting, we feel like Krishna's dancing on our tongue. But sometimes that really happens to all of us. And when it happens, we understand, yes, this is a reality. Now I have to try it again. Like Dhruva, he saw Krishna for a moment, then Krishna left. And then he said, "Now my goal is to see Krishna again." So you get that taste. And my goal is to get that taste, not from, and the key to get that taste is I'm not getting that taste for my own pleasure. Turns out, like a mother much more enjoys her child eating than eating herself. Similarly, when we get that taste, we understand I'm getting that taste. And you will have this realization, I promise you, because I'm pleasing Krishna. And that's the difference from pleasing ourselves. I hope that answered your question, Gail.
Yeah.
Let's go to Ishwara Sundari. Did Ishwara Sundari have a question?
Yes, I'm sorry, Hare Krishna. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Half decent, so I'm going to stay off camera.
that's fine.
Thank you for class. This is a wonderful subject and one that I constantly contemplate. And I hope I don't sound so mushy, but I think I might, so forgive me for that.
Sure.
I believe, because of experience, that life, that happiness is a state of mind, but not so simply said. I think it's a work in progress to get there. I have suffered pretty much my whole life for many reasons, from abuse to chronic pain to loss to you name it, I've gone through it. But somehow, I don't know if it was from a previous past life or something, I've never taken the the challenges of life, the loss, the pain, so much that I can't see light in it. When I was younger, I didn't know what that was. But when I came into Krishna consciousness, it all made sense to me. And then that's when I started to truly apply that, what we go through in life, let's say, for example, physical pain, it's true, it's real, and it's hard to deal with. I've been through it most of my life. The loss of somebody is pain. It's pain, it's suffering. A breakup is painful. Loneliness is painful. But we have a choice, and we have I think, enough knowledge from the Shastra to be able to separate the pain and the suffering as two different things. So when I have been in the worst pain, and I still am, I wake up pretty much every morning either with back pain, neck pain, hand pain. I have scoliosis that's a nest shape, so it's not the easiest one to deal with. And as you get older, it gets worse and worse. I've had spine surgery 2 years ago. So I do things obviously and yoga to make it better so that I could live and be able to function and work. But you could choose to think of that pain and suffer with it every day, or take it as this is what Krishna has given me. When I get up, I do a couple of stretches, and the next thing I do is I sit at the edge of my bed and I thank Krishna. I thank Krishna for every day that I wake up. I thank Krishna for the pain, because I have it for a reason. And if you are studying Shastra, you have to see that everything that we go through is for a reason. And that way, that's when you kind of let the suffering subside. And I do wake up happy because I am grateful. And that's just the way I take life. I do not have an easy life, but I feel somebody asked me that. They're like, you go through so much and we don't know about it until something comes up that, it has to be discussed. And then we're looking at you like, where did this all happen? You don't look like you suffer a day in your life. And I'm like, because I choose to be happy, because happiness is a state of mind. And if you're in Krishna consciousness, then that's your state of mind.
Well, you said that better than I could say it. Thank you very much for that contribution. Said very, very well. People ask me, are you happy a devotee or are you suffering? Well, we each have different modes of nature. We each come from a previous life with certain baggage. We have certain, like all of you have gone overseas, have suffered jet lag at some time. We have reincarnation lag, where we have, if we remembered all our previous lives, Krishna tells Arjuna, you can't do that because we would suffer too much. Imagine thinking of all the parents we had 100 different parents, too much. But we remember the impressions from our previous lives. That's what we remember. And when we see our suffering, we can say, oh, somehow this has happened. And your attitude to saying, yeah, to see everything, see Krishna as really our friend, to see that Krishna is always kind, to see that Krishna is always merciful. When we reach that stage, at that point, then we're Krishna conscious. That's what it means. And that's what we work on to get there. So that takes time and effort and being the mode of goodness. With that, we'll greet the deities, which every time I do that, it helps bring me a little tiny bit closer to the mode of goodness. And in the mode of goodness, we get knowledge. And when we get knowledge, we understand that our suffering is temporary and our connection with Krishna is not. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be at the Bhakti Center. Somehow I wish I could be there in person, but life throws funny things, and that hasn't happened in a while. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Brahmatirtha Prabhu. Thank you, Ishwari Sundari. Thank you, Madan Gopal Prabhu. You're the most quoted devotee here. Everybody quotes you all the time. Okay, darshan time. Cameras on, please. Thank you. Amrita Kishori, what is this?
Jai Shri Ram Hari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Hari Purusham Can't do it.
Yeah, Adipurusha Prabhu is facilitating darshan today, so it's a shorter version. Hare Krishna. Okay. Welcome to the Afterglow. Madam Gopal Prabhu, are you available to lead us in the Afterglow?
Hare Krishna. I wasn't planning on, but where's Brahmatirtha Prabhu? Oh, I guess he had to leave. Okay. Yeah, sure. I will be here. Yes.
Great. Devotees, dear devotees, please ask questions. Krishna Kumari.
Yeah, it's so beautiful to see even for a moment that Govardhan Hill behind Shishi Radhamuralidhar and Gaurachandra. I was thinking about Brahmatirtha's speaking and about Indra, like he was the ultimately attached, right? And Krishna lifted a hill for him, So sometimes we're attached also. Krishna might not be lifting the most beautiful hill and the most beautiful sight you could ever see with cows, but he does show up in our lives, and it's quite wondrous. I also was thinking about something Urmila was teaching us in her career Dharma course back in the spring. She said one time she had someone that was practicing Buddhism for so long, and they came to her and they wanted to figure out their path, what they should be doing for work. And the whole process is really to sit with the person and to see if they light up, and when they light up, what gives them joy. And she said, she asked them all these questions, and they weren't in touch. They actually could no longer sense what makes them tick. So anyway, I was just thinking about that, and that kind of practice. We might think oh, I'm supposed to be more detached, but actually we have certain natures that are really important to be in touch with, not to just write everything off and be detached. So I just wanted to share those two little points. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Krishna Kumari, for your spiritual vision. Madam Gopal Prabhu put something profound in the chat. I have the same thought, Madam Gopal Prabhu. I think I'm on the right path if I have the same thoughts as you. Would you like to speak on that?
Yeah, this is, I liked Gail's Mataji's question. Yeah, Gail's still here. She was asking about, both seem fleeting. Krishna said in the Gita, the wise person avoids material selfish pleasures because they have a beginning and end. But in our experience, we see even Krishna consciousness. We feel bliss, we go to Arti, we feel ecstatic, and then we come home, we feel down. It seems to be the same. That has a beginning and end too. But really the point is availability. Is that, see, you buy fireworks from the store. You can buy them right now because Diwali is going on. And you enjoy the fireworks in your front yard, and as a beginning and end, it's over. There's no more fireworks. That's it. But the comparison is with spiritual life, Krishna's mercy is always streaming down upon us. That's like the sun's rays on a good day. They're always streaming down. The sun is always streaming. But we are hiding away from it, like insects crawling away from the sun to hide in the underbelly of a rock. We should crawl out from under our rock and bask in the mercy of Krishna and really enjoy the non-stop stream that's available. So that stream is endless, has no beginning, no end. That's the key difference. It's just that we ourselves, the fact that we keep going in and out of the rock out of our own choice, is what gives it the appearance of being intermittent. Otherwise, Krishna consciousness, the bliss from Krishna consciousness is available anytime. Making khichdi is very simple. It's one of the simplest things. You make khichdi, right? You can make it any time. But even khichdi, you need the rice, you need the dal, you need the water, you need the salt, you need the turmeric, and you need the spices, and you need the pot, you need the stove. You need so many things. But when you enjoy Krishna, you need nothing. You just think of Krishna and chant. And if you approach it the right way, your heart will be flooded with the bliss that the soul is seeking. You don't need other things. You don't need other things. External things at all. No external situation can check the flow of bliss that's available in Krishna consciousness. See, that's why there's no beginning, no end. It's just that we choose to put a start and stop to it because we're conditioned. We think we're missing out on something. So Gail is back up with her hand. Go ahead, Gail.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you very, very much for addressing this question. So I guess you would say that our going under the rock is analogous to our seeking our own pleasure instead of Krishna's. But even when we make a conscious effort to do X, Y, or Z for Krishna's pleasure, right? That doesn't always, and even many times, seem to bring that experience of bliss either.
Yeah. I saw this commercial once. It was really funny. Many years ago, maybe 20 years ago on TV. This really chubby guy, and he was in a gym, and he ran one little lap, like a tenth of a mile, little lap. He ran really hard, and then he comes and then he weighs himself to see how much weight he lost by running, for 10 seconds. So that's kind of like us, This Cheto Darpana Marjanam means where the process is cleaning the mirror of the heart. And our success is measured by, or will be determined by two things. How dirty is the mirror to begin with, and how intensely are we cleaning?
Mm-hmm.
Any combination of those two will determine the success. So to the extent that the mirror is clean, to that extent we'll see ourselves, we'll be able to enjoy the bliss. So that's why even when we're saying, I put so much effort, but come on, you know how much yogis put in effort, like just to get a glimpse of the Lord, hundreds of years or, many, many years. They surround themselves with fires and the heat, and they put themselves in water in the winter. We're not doing any of that. Not that we should, but we're doing so little and we think we did so much. That's our problem. So that's our real problem, is that we need to just reflect on ourselves and see, am I really putting the effort? That's why, the Bhagavatam verse says, Tivrena Bhakti Yogena Yajeta Purusham Param, second canto. It says, if you're seeking material things full of all desires, or if you want liberation, or if you have no material desires, doesn't matter. Worship Krishna with intensity. Tivrena Bhakti Yogena. Then all your desires will be purified. So that intensity means we got to bring our A game. We got to recognize how dirty the mirror is and really put in, white knuckle, elbow grease, and really, really do it. And then what happens? You'll see that, oh my God, my Lord, I'm so incompetent and powerless in front of this mountain of ego that I've built. You please help me. That is the beginning of our success journey. The moment we think, I've done so much for you, what's going on? Why am I not getting reciprocation? That's going to put a pause on our journey. But the moment we say, my Lord, no amount of my personal effort is going to work. I'll put whatever I can, 100%, but only you can bring me. Then that attitude will accelerate the Lord's engagement and involvement in our success story. See?
Yeah, very nice, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Stephanie, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. This reminds me, I don't know if, this aligns exactly, but I was in a class with Giri Govardhan once, and I was like, I'm chanting, but I'm still feeling terrible inside. Like, what am I doing wrong? And what he said to me helps me so much today. He said, this isn't a transactional love. Just because you're chanting doesn't mean now you should instantly feel better. He said it's a relationship. Just like if I were to go to my friend and express how I feel, I can't expect them to make me feel better, but it could deepen our relationship. And then most of the time from that does happen. But that just helps me so much in my practice, knowing that it's not an instantaneous thing, that I'm going to feel better because I'm chanting now. Out of all these years, now I've decided to chant. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. That's wonderful. Yes, it's so beautiful that you stated. It's about relationship. In America or in the West, they, when someone wants to establish a relationship, like a boy will bring flowers to a girl and keep bringing nice things, and she might keep telling him, you're not my type. The relationship won't go any further. Like, what do you mean I'm not your type? So sometimes we may feel Krishna is telling us, you're not my type. We may feel like that. Because Krishna is not responding. I'm doing so much, I'm chanting, and you seem like you're rejecting me. How am I not your type? Well, what we should do is do some research and see what is Krishna's type. Krishna actually has a type. He does not like duplicity. If you're duplicitous, he says you're not my type. But he'll say it in different ways. You won't get the reciprocation, because even if I'm trying, I'm duplicitous. If I'm overly selfish, he'll keep saying that. Of course, if I'm addicted to something and I'm trying to come out of it, you're my type. I'll help you pull you out. No problem. But if I'm putting on one face to Krishna and then pretending, you can't fool Krishna. You see. So if we are trying to fool Krishna, then we're not his type. But the moment we give up that, then we become his type. So we can become his type. You see. That's why Krishna says, such and such devotee is very dear to me. That means that those who are not as dear. It is a fact. Krishna has gradations. In the end of the Gita, after saying the Sarva Dharman verse in 1866, he goes on to say, this kind of devotee is most dear to me. And the following verse he says, there's nobody ever going to be more dear to me than this kind of devotee. What kind of devotee is that? The kind of devotee who shares this Bhagavad Gita with others, this knowledge. So that's the top. So you can see even in Krishna's book, there is those who are my type, and then those who are okay, sort of my type, and those who are not my type. And we can always become his type. And that's the whole process of Krishna consciousness. Become his type, in which when we offer our flower bouquet to him, he will say, yes, I will accept it. In that verse, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, he says, this type of devotee I'll accept. What type? He used the word bhaktya 2 times in the same little verse. If you offer with me love, if you offer with love and affection, then I'll accept it. That's his type. See, so we just have to, let our heart be his type, and then he'll reciprocate. This perfect analogy you gave, Stephanie, or the point about the relationship. And when you're building a relationship, that's what matters. Thank you so much. Min has a hand up. Go ahead, Min.
Thank you so much. Before my question, I wanted to tell you that the other morning I was reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, and I had a question came up about Advaita Acharya. So I was just holding that question, and early afternoon I was listening to Radhika Raman Prabhu's lecture on Shiva that he was given like 11 years ago or something, and in that lecture you appear and answer my question about Advaita Acharya. So it was really, really amazing. My question here is, we heard how this pain, when we look at pain, that we could sort of say, this is not mine. I am not this pain. In many ways, it seems like it's almost easier to look at my pain that way because it's something I don't like anyway. So to say this is not me makes more sense than to say when I do feel happy. For example, simple example of when my puppies come and sit next to me, it makes me happy, and to tell myself, well, this happiness is fleeting. It's not eternal. To say like, this is not mine, this happiness, or how do we look at that? Because when I think that way, it just feels so impersonal. But I do think that it is important to see it properly, that it is not eternal. So what is the best way to sort of engage our happiness that may not be eternal?
That's a great point, that we tend to, especially when we've become very accustomed to stepping aside and seeing ourselves as, okay, this is my body, but it's not me. It is very useful as a pain management tool, for sure. It actually is. I fractured my leg, but I know I'm not this body. So it actually helps so much in the overall pain, because the sensation of pain is there, but the suffering is optional. If you think you're the body, you'll be devastated and you'll be broken inside because you think you are this, you see. But as you get more detached, now the subtle trap that you mentioned is what you call selective detachment, right? In the sense that, let's see, it's easier to detach from pain than pleasure. Pain naturally pushes the mind to seek relief, and the intellect quickly agrees to disidentify. This suffering is not me. But pleasure invites identification, you see. This is mine. This is me enjoying. So while pain humbles the false ego, pleasure inflates the false ego. You see, that's why Krishna says, Yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate. The fleeting pleasures that Gail was talking about of the material world, of contact with the senses, they're dukkha yona. Dukkha yoni means the mother. Yoni means mother or the womb. They're the mother of dukkha, misery. So he's not condemning the pleasure, actually. He's teaching us to look deeper. That the pleasure that comes from bodily contact is fleeting, ultimately frustrating because it strengthens the false identification. That's the problem. It's not like, we have these 4 Elliott principles because all these old people don't want us to have any fun. No. It's because it rivets the consciousness to this body. Now, on the flip side, you mentioned there's impersonalism. So impersonalism says all is illusion, so reject both pain and pleasure. But we are not of that school. We are the Bhakti school. Bhakti school says redirect both to Krishna. That's the point. We don't detach by suppressing feeling. We spiritualize the feeling. See? When a devotee feels joy in chanting, feels joy in offering something, you feel some bliss in serving, that joy is fully personal, yet also fully detached because it's not centered on the false ego, you see. Prabhupada said a devotee is not void of desire. His only desire is to please Krishna. So rather than saying this is not mine in a way that negates the emotion, we can say this happiness is meant for Krishna's pleasure. The difference is in consciousness. One is a negation, the other is a dedication. So when some puppies come and sit on our lap and they're licking our palms, we don't need to detach ourselves too much from that point. See, all we need to do is recognize, look at these beautiful souls. They're so sweet, innocent. These are Krishna's souls, and just as I'm looking at them, their helplessness and their dependence on me, maybe Krishna looks at me like that too. Maybe I can be a little bit like that. So we can leverage those feelings of appreciation. We can learn something from everybody. In the Bhagavatam, there's a whole section on the different gurus. He sees a spider as a guru and different, like you can see gurus everywhere. So even in puppy dogs, you can see this. It's something to learn. You can leverage that uplifting, emotionally satisfying moment to spiritualize that feeling. That's why we read the Bhagavatam. That's why we read the Bhagavad Gita. Why do you think Krishna says, I'm the light of the sun and moon, I'm the taste in water? Because all these feelings that we experience connected with Krishna. He's giving us methods and templates to use. So when we experience things, can we connect it quickly to Krishna? See his hand in it. There's so many ways to spiritualize the interaction between us and the puppies. So many. You can see the beauty of just the amazing architecture of the way the puppies are constructed by Krishna. And then you can see their loyalty. Dogs have amazing loyalty, I can learn from that. Prabhupada said, I'm Krishna's dog. Actually, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says. So what can we learn? Krishna's dog meaning that I'm loyal to Krishna. I'm his servant, and simple. So there's so much we can do to leverage our experiences, Krishnaizing them, spiritualizing them. That's the whole point. That's why we're not detached. We're not impersonalists. And then, of course, we know how to transform our enjoyment into an offering. When we eat, it becomes prasadam. We only eat prasadam, so it's a sacred communion. It's not an indulgence. Music, which used to be selfish before, now is kirtan, is a divine expression. And what we used to run after doing some successful work, it becomes service now, full of gratitude, not pride. So we're transforming everything. That's why it's not impersonal. Practical exercise is, how can I offer this to you, Krishna? That simple question changes a current of enjoyment into an act of bhakti. That's all. And then over time we experience the higher taste, in which any scenario we find ourselves in, we connect with Krishna right away, and that becomes a devotional act because you're thinking of Krishna. You see. Ultimately, what is the only rule? The only 2 rules. Always think of Krishna, never forget him. So if we can leverage all our circumstances to do that, then we're practicing all the limbs of bhakti. Okay, Amin?
Thank you so much. That was really beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Gopal Prabhu. I'm so glad I crawled out from under my rock to hear this class in the afterglow, questions and answers. Thank you so much, dear devotees, for your association. Amrita Kishori, can you recite the Maha Mantra in your cow Svarup?
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you very much, Madam Gopal Prabhu. Thank you, dear devotees. We love you. We need you. Happy Thursday. Hare Krishna.
Arigato, domo arigato.
Arigato, Amrita Kishori. Hare Krishna.
ありがとうございます。